just gone low tech. And this is a presentation to a networking group where it's a meet and mingle, and then people have a section where they have an informal kind of added value speaker. And it's not so much, well, the way I'm pitching it is, it's not so much a presentation, but about kind of food for thought. And so I'm going to start from now. So, good morning everybody. My name is Salwan Lai of Reader and I Chartered Surveyors, and today I want to kind of give you an idea of business spaces, because we've got either business owners here who are either startups or established business owners, or we've got people who are employees, and hopefully they'll be in business space. So we've moved on from being kind of in the pandemic, post-pandemic. We are in an area where business space can be lots of different things. So they can be remote working from home, or they can be the traditional shops, offices and industrial spaces. And what I want to touch on is, actually, we've moved away from your business, you must have space. And I want to help people kind of think about whether they will need the space and whether they need to spend the money. So my idea is, do I need business premises? And I just want to touch on 3 areas in regards to just basically what type of business you are, the customers you serve, and then if you're thinking of business space, how much it costs, because you think, oh, I run a business, I'm going to get some business spaces, but actually I don't know how much that expenditure would be. And we've got, pastimes that sometimes turn into hobbies, that you think, actually, this is more than a hobby, I want to turn it into a thriving business. So you start from home, you generate an online shop, and then you think, actually, I want a physical shop. But before you go there, you have to make sure your type of business actually needs a physical premises. So it's all well and good saying, I'm an e-shop, but should you stay an e-shop and not necessarily need somebody to come in to physically handle the goods and see the goods? Or are you a business where actually you're not client-facing, you can be behind the scenes, have an office, not have someone visit you? Do you need an office? Can you work remotely from home? Because an office space costs money. So really you need to think about the type of business you are, whether you're e-commerce, virtual, whether you're public-facing, or whether you can be more behind the scenes so that you don't actually need to fork out the expense of premises. But then you need to think also, who are your customers? Are your customers likely to be just at their computer and just browsing all the time, any old time of day, and for convenience they don't need to actually interact with you? Or are they the type of people who actually, for example, you're a hairdresser, you can't be virtual for that, you need actual premises for that. So if you're a service that people need to access you, then you would need a physical space. So your customers might drive your purpose of whether you need space or not. And then it comes to, so you're deciding you need business space. What's the actual cost? We've always have in our head, there's rent for business premises. They can be, depending on where you're looking, they can be driven by popularity of place. So for example, a high street where it's really busy, I'm not sure it is these days, but a high street where it used to be thriving, footfall, you pay a lot more money than if you were in maybe a kind of a quieter suburban local parade. And so the location will affect how much rent you might pay. And then a lot of people might rent houses or flats or homes, but they don't necessarily rent commercial property spaces. So there's sometimes a difference in what you're paying in terms of outgoing. So a house or home there's council tax. A business premises, you have what's called business rates, and for that is like the equivalent of council tax, and you pay that to the council on a monthly basis, But what some people don't know is if you're a small business and it's your only business, and you open like a small shop in a local parade, you might not need to pay the business rates because there's an exemption. So that's a saving that you might not have thought about, or it's an expense you might have thought you had to pay, but in fact that's a saving that you can put back into your business. And then there's the costs of utilities, insurance, kind of the standard things that you'd expect as an occupier. But then you might not think you might need a solicitor and a surveyor, because as much as you can DIY things yourself, sometimes getting a professional is a lot better and more time and cost saving in the long run, because you might end up signing yourself a huge amount of liabilities, whereas a solicitor might tell you actually you should be concerned about the repairing issues, the rights of way, or the rights that you might lose. So a solicitor will be able to kind of guide you better so that you don't end up it's almost a false economy where you don't get professional help. You do it yourself, and then you end up kind of getting yourself in trouble further down the line. So you decided to use business space. Where is it that you look for business space? So we've either looked for houses on Rightmove or flats on Zoopla. Where would you go for commercial properties? Not always that obvious, but in the last probably 10, 15 years, Rightmove moved into commercial property. So you now have a tab on Rightmove where agents can put their business spaces, and you can search there. And there's a classic that kind of commercial agents use, which is estate agents, Estates Gazette property link, and that's where you can find lots of properties as well. So an online search, that's becoming more prevalent, but there's nothing that beats an agency board. So you go past the premises, you think, oh, this is ideal, phone up the agent, or walk around, always have a feel for the area that you might want to be, and that's always useful rather than just saying, I want to shop, oh, this one looks nice, and you don't know the area, and you're like, oh, I want to be a barber's, and then there's like, just out of shot, a barber there, and a barber there. You've got to know your competition in your area as well. And then sometimes what's even better is word of mouth. So you speak to your friends or your colleagues, and just to kind of your community say that you happen to be looking for something, and you never know, someone else might know, oh, I know John, he owns this shop, his tenant's just going. So that's something that they might not be marketing at the moment. So it's always nice to kind of speak to other people, or kind of voice maybe your project or something, and don't be afraid to be vocal about it, because you never know what opportunities aren't advertised, and what opportunities like just friends or colleagues might be like, oh, I didn't know you did mobile beauty. There's a beautician's is looking to sell their business, so it's useful to kind of find properties on different ways, whether online, physically walking around, or word of mouth. So coming to the last section really is, we move from turning maybe a hobby business into a thriving business, whether you actually need space, and then considering kind of your options, and just the idea of hopefully something might resonate with you, what I've said, in terms of the questions that you might want to ask yourself before you kind of dive into getting some business spaces really. So that's just some food for thought. If anyone's got any questions.